Hello everyone. In today's video, I have a sew along for you. We're going to be sewing McCall's 5893. And this one is for beginners. The pattern is rated as easy, and I do agree. If you are a beginner with basic sewing skills, you should be able to follow along to complete the project, especially if you're following the sew along. I will be walking you through the entire process from beginning to end with lots of details, special tips to help you complete the project. Now, if you do not know how to sew yet and you would like to learn, I have a beginner's sewing course. It's called Learn to Sew Mastering the Basics, where I walk you, the new beginner, someone who has never even touched a sewing machine before, how to learn the basics of garment sewing, how to master the basics of garment sewing. There is a link in the description box for you to go and check that out, get all of the details to decide if it's for you. Now, if you are a part of my private email community, then you should have already received the information about the sew along with links to the pattern and fabric options. So hopefully you got that. You have all of your supplies, your fabric, and you are ready to get started. The dress that I'm wearing, the bodice that you see, is the one that we're going to sew in the sew along. But I have sewn this dress 4 times. Yes, 4 times. It's that good. So after I worked on a project, I spent a lot of time on this two-piece set, and it did not turn out the way that I had hoped. And I was very excited about it. So whenever something like that happens, I will go and turn to a very easy, quick to sew project to get my juices flowing again, or to get over the disappointment, because it's disappointing when something like that happens. So I chose this pattern and I sewed a dress because I decided I need house dresses. And I thought this was a lovely option to make a house dress. So I made the first one and loved it. So I decided I'm going to sew a few more. So I did, and I'll show you video of me wearing those 4 dresses at the end of the video. But after sewing the first one, I determined that the bodice was too low for my comfort. I don't like to sew to show cleavage. And so I knew that I was going to raise the bodice. And I also wanted to have more coverage in this area because my bra straps were showing on with that first dress. So I made that change. And on the second, third, and fourth, I have more coverage for my comfort. Also, on the second and third one, I lengthened the dress because I wanted longer dresses. Now, I will not be following the directions of the pattern in the order that they are printed. I have my own system. I like to do my own thing. I will add things, I will take things away, and I like to do it my way. So if you are following with your pattern instructions while you're watching the sew along, please be aware that I'm not following in the order that they have it printed. Now, in the first 3 dresses, I did not add pockets, but in the last one, in this dress, in the sew along, I did add pockets. And I adjusted the pocket piece because the pocket piece that they give you for this dress is a short pocket piece that does not reach all the way up to the waist. And I don't like pockets flapping around on the inside of my dress. If you watched my last video, then you saw me make that adjustment. So in this video, we're going to be doing the same thing, except we're going to be making the pocket even longer because this dress has an empire waist. So we're going to raise that pocket piece all the way up to this seam here for the empire waist, and it feels just as natural on the inside. So if you are ready to sew this dress, let's get started. The pattern calls for stretch knits only, such as jersey, cotton knits, poly blend knits, or border prints. I will be using this leopard print that I purchased from Hobby Lobby. Now, when you're choosing your fabric, you need to make sure that you are choosing a knit that has the appropriate amount of stretch. And on the back of the envelope is a pick a knit rule. It's a stretch guide. And what you will do is measure 4 inches of fabric that will cover the black rectangle, and then holding that fabric between your fingers, making sure that you're not including the selvage end, you will stretch the fabric over to the end of the white rectangle. And if your fabric stretches to to the end of that rectangle easily, then your fabric has enough stretch. If it does not stretch or if it struggles to stretch, then you may want to choose a different fabric. If your fabric stretches past the white rectangle, that's fine. It's okay to have more stretch, but you just want to make sure that you have enough. Okay, since we're working with a knit fabric, you want to make sure you're using the appropriate needle. You can use either a jersey needle or a stretch needle, and the size will depend on the thickness of your fabric. I'm using a very lightweight knit, so I can use either a 70-10 jersey needle or a 75-11 stretch needle. And since I don't have any 10s left, I'm going to go with my 75-11 needle. And then you will need elastic, and we're using a 1/4 inch. This is what the pattern suggests, 1/4 inch elastic for our waist seam. And you will use your pattern piece, the elastic guide, to measure the elastic. If you're looking for a place to purchase elastic in bulk, then I want to share with you where I purchase my elastics. This one is 1/4 inch elastic and it comes in a roll of 50 yards. I purchased it from Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description box below. And then the rest of my elastics I've purchased from Wawak, and I'll leave a link in the description below. So this is 1.5 inch elastic. Then I have 1 inch elastic. This is my 3/4 inch elastic. It comes with 50 yards, and I can't remember how much comes on the other two that I just showed you, but a lot. This is 1/2 inch elastic, 50 yards. And then finally, I have 3/8 inch elastic, and that's 12 yards. So check the links in the description box to get yourself some elastic in bulk if that's what you need. Okay, let's look at the pattern pieces that we're going to be using to sew the dress. First, we're going to need piece number 6. This is the skirt front and the skirt back. So you're going to cut 2 on the fold. Piece number 2 is our bodice back, and as you can see, I've made an alteration. I'll show you how to do that. You're going to cut 1 on the fold. Piece number 1 is our bodice front. I'm going to show you how to make the alteration, and we're going to cut 1 on the fold. And then piece number 5 is our pocket piece. We're going to cut 4, and again, you can see that I've made the alteration. I'll show you how to do that to make sure that your pocket is anchored into the waist seam. And if you will be adding a sleeve to your dress, this is piece number 3, and you will cut 2. And then finally, you can use piece number 8, which is the guide for the elastic. You will measure your elastic according to the size that you're cutting. Now I'll show you how to alter those pattern pieces. Okay, I've already made the adjustments on the pattern front, so I'm going to walk you through the steps. First, you're going to place a piece of tracing paper behind the pattern piece. Then you're going to place pattern weight, something to hold that down, and you will use your seam gauge and measure over the amount that you want to raise your neckline. Place your seam gauge right along the cutting edge of your pattern and then just trace all the way around that curve on the neckline from one end up to the other. Then you're going to use your pencil and just connect those lines, drawing in the curve. Then you will tape down the paper, the tracing paper, to the pattern tissue on the front and the back. And you have your new neckline. Okay, now I have to make an adjustment to the bodice back piece at the shoulder because the width on the shoulder has to be equal to the width on the shoulder from the front piece. So I'm going to measure over 5/8 of an inch. And now I'm going to use my styling design ruler to extend this line, curving it to blend back into the edge of the pattern. Manipulate the ruler until you get the curve that you want. And this seems to be good for me. Okay. So this is my new curve on the back. Now I'm going to use my surgical tape. This tape is excellent. This is the only tape I use now when I'm altering patterns. It's from 3M and I purchased it on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description box, but I really like this tape because it is easy to remove from your pattern. If you make a mistake, you can peel it away slowly without tearing the pattern piece. And also you can iron on top of this without crinkling up your pattern piece. So when you're using regular tape to tape down your pattern pieces, if you try to iron over that tape, even if you're using magic tape, which is what I used to use before, if you try to iron on top of it, it will crinkle up your pattern piece. So this one is really great because when you iron on top of it, nothing happens. It doesn't wrinkle, it doesn't crinkle, it doesn't buckle, it stays flat. So now we're going to cut our new pattern piece. And I like to cut away the excess tracing paper on the back side. Then I will tape down the tissue paper on the back side of the pattern also. And now we have our adjusted back pattern piece. Okay, after you have made your adjustments to the pattern pieces, you want to make sure that they line up at the shoulder. So we will be placing these with the right sides facing when we're sewing together or sewing the shoulder seam. So you want to make sure that everything aligns. So let's turn it out. Make sure that the edges are even. Okay, now we're ready to make the adjustment to the pocket piece. And here, as you can see, when I align the pocket piece with the notch on the skirt, this is where the pocket piece stops. So when you're wearing this garment, the pocket is going to be flapping all around on the inside. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend this up to the top and anchor it to the waistline. That way the pocket is secure when we're wearing the garment. And when we go to put our hands in our pockets, we don't have to play around to find the pocket. All right. So the first thing we need to do is take some tracing paper. And we're going to lay that right on top of the, go this way. We're going to lay that right on top of the pocket piece, making sure that we have enough. Let me move it down some. We want to make sure that you have it or enough paper on the sides of the pocket piece. Okay. And then reaching up to the top edge of the skirt. Then we're going to transfer that notch. We need to be able to see the notch on the tracing paper. So go ahead and trace that. Then we're going to take our pocket piece and we're going to align the notch on the pocket piece with the notch on the skirt pattern piece or on the tracing paper. And then making sure that the lines or the edge of the pocket piece is even with the edge of the skirt. Okay. And then place a few pattern weights on top just to hold it in place. Now we're going to draw a line up to the edge, and this is going to extend it to a long pocket piece. All right, so I'm going to use my styling design ruler, and what we're going to do is we're going to align it to where this curve is going to extend. Let me move my pattern weights over. So finding a position on that pocket piece that will flow up to the top. Okay. And we will freehand it once we pass this curved area. We're going to freehand it and draw the line up to where we have enough width on that top edge to anchor into the waist seam. So I'm going to start down here and just continue that curve. And then from here, I'm going to freehand it. Okay, so you see how that we're straight and then it curves out just a little to the top edge. Okay, or if you want to just make it completely straight, that's fine, it doesn't matter. And then you want to draw or trace the top edge of the skirt and the side edge. Okay, then we're going to pin or tape our pocket piece onto the tracing paper. Okay, now we're going to cut out our new pocket piece. Then I'm going to go and cut it away from the back. And now we have our new pattern piece. And when we place it onto the skirt now, it fits in nicely. It will be anchored into the waist and we will not have floppy pockets on the inside. Before we get started, I want to show you something that I've done to my fabric pieces. And this is not something that you need to do. It's extra that I usually include when I'm sewing in pockets. I have finished off the raw edges of my pockets using my serger. And the reason I do that is because when I sew the pockets into the side seam, I want a clean edge. I want a clean finish on that edge. I've also done that on the side seams of the skirt pieces because when the pocket is attached to that raw edge, I want both edges to be clean on the skirt and the pocket. So if you don't have a serger and you want to do this, you can use pinking shears or you can use an overcast stitch on your sewing machine, or you can just leave your edges raw. We're working with knit fabric and knit fabric does not tend to ravel, so you will be fine. I like to do a little extra to make the insides pretty. I did not serge the raw edge on the bodice pieces or the sleeve because I will be finishing the seam allowances after those pieces have been sewn together. Okay, we're going to start with our bodice front. We're going to sew in our darts. I have traced the markings and I've already pinned one side. So we're going to start at the dart point and place a pin right at the point. Then we'll go down to the edge where the dart legs are, and I've snipped into those markings on the end, which helps to align those lines. So you will go ahead and take a pin and pin through those two lines, making sure that you're catching the lines on both sides as you're pinning along the length of the dart. If you're inserting sleeves into your dress, then we're going to take the sleeve and pin the sides together. Now we're going to pin the pocket pieces to the skirt front and the skirt back. Here you can see I've pinned one already. So we're going to take our front or the back, it doesn't matter because they're actually the same. We're going to take one skirt piece, we're going to take a pocket, and we're going to place the pocket piece face down, right sides facing. And if you're wondering why I'm using a different fabric for my pockets, it's because I ran out of fabric. I ran out of this fabric, so I had to use some scrap fabric. So first we're going to line up the notches. So find the notch on your skirt and your pocket, and we're going to pin those together. Then we're going to pin at the waist edge, then the bottom edge of the pocket, and we'll go and add another pin in between. Then you want to pin all of your pocket pieces. Then we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew starting at the edge of the dart all the way up to the dart point. And once you near the dart point, you want to sew parallel to that fold as close as possible, and that will help to allow the dart to just fade into the rest of the garment without having a sharp point. Then we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew from the top edge of the pocket using a 3/8 inch seam allowance and stitch all the way down to the bottom edge. Then we're going to go to the pressing station and we're going to press our darts flat first. I'm using my tailor's ham, but if you don't have one, it's okay. You can do this on your flat ironing board. Going to press flat. Then we're going to open that out and press our darts toward the center. Now we're going to press the pocket seam flat. Then we're going to open it out and press the seam toward the pocket. Okay, we're going to sew our skirt pieces together. I have one skirt with the right side facing up. We're going to bring over another and we're going to place it with the right side facing down. I'm going to start right here at the corners of the pocket, and we want to align those two pieces. And we're going to pin, making sure that the seam allowance is folded out on both sides, and we're going to pin right there. Then we'll go down and pin at the bottom edge. And then you can continue pinning the length of the skirt. Then we're going to go back up to the pocket area, and I'm going to go to the very top first because I like to pin right where these seams meet. I want to make sure that the front and back seam are even. And then we'll continue pinning around the edge of the pocket. Okay, now you will pin both sides of the skirt. Then we're going to set this aside and pin our bodice front and back. We're going to place those. I have the back with the right side facing up. I'm going to take the front and place those together, right sides facing. And I'm going to pin the side seams or the side edges and the shoulder edges. And you can continue pinning on both sides. So we're going to go to the sewing machine, and starting with the bodice, we're going to sew from the bottom edge of the side all the way up to the top. Then we're going to sew the shoulder seams from the outer edge where the underarm is all the way over to the inner edge where the neckline is. We're going to sew the sleeve seam from the bottom all the way up to the top. And for the skirt, we're going to start at the bottom edge of the skirt and sew all the way up to the first marking. We're going to back stitch and cut the stitching. Then we're going to move the fabric up to the next marking. And we're going to begin with the back stitch and sew all the way up to the top edge. Then we're going to move our fabric back down to that first marking, and we're going to sew starting at that stitch. We're going to sew all the way around the pocket. Finish off the seam allowance for your sleeve. Then press the seam flat on your sleeve. Open it out and press the seam allowance toward the back of the sleeve, the side that has the double notch. And for the skirt, before we start, we need to clip right at the edge of the pocket on the skirt back. Now at this point, you need to determine which side of the skirt is going to be your back. So whichever side is your skirt back, you're going to clip into the seam allowance right where that pocket ends. Then you will press the seam allowance below the pocket open. Then you will press the rest of the seam allowance toward the front of the skirt with the pocket. Okay, now we're ready to prepare the skirt to attach it to the bodice, and we're looking at the skirt front with the pockets facing toward the front. We're going to pin the edge of the pocket to the top edge of the skirt. We're going to create 2 rows of basting stitches, and we're going to start near the side seam, and we're going to sew a basting stitch at the 5/8 inch mark. Then we're going to sew a second row at 1/4 of an inch inside the seam allowance, or 1/2 inch from the raw edge. Okay, we've added our basting stitches and we have the skirt front facing up. We're going to bring our bodice over with the wrong side facing out, and we're going to take our bodice and we're going to feed the skirt through the bodice. Okay, take the skirt and feed it through. And now we have the right sides of the bodice and the skirt facing. We're going to start with the side seam of the bodice and the side seam of the skirt. We're going to match those up, and we're going to pinning right inside of the seam on both sides. Okay, then we're going to find the notch on the bodice and the notch on the skirt and pin. I'm going to go over to the other side and do the same thing. The side seam of the bodice to the side seam of the skirt. And I have all of my basting threads here, so I want to move those out of the way. And the notch on the bodice to the notch on the skirt. Okay, now we're going to go to the back to the bodice, and we're going to pin, make sure you have the skirt back and the bodice back facing each other. And we're going to start at the notch on the bodice back and match it to the notch on the skirt back. Okay, so this is what we have: our bodice and skirt back, our bodice and skirt front. So I'm going to go over to the side where I have my threads, and I'm going to start on one side. Let me turn this around. To where I can pull my threads to the right or to the left. So I have my basting threads, and I'm going to start gathering this side first. So I want to pull the threads for this side, the 2 rows of basting stitches. Okay, there are my 2 threads. And then I'm going to start gathering the skirt to fit into the bodice. I'm just going to pull the thread, and as I pull the thread, you will see it gathering. And I'm going to pull over to make the gathers go past the red pin there. And you can see how the gathers are moving over. We're just going to continue that. I have one side of the skirt gathered, and you can see that my bodice is larger now. So what we're going to do is we're going to start pulling or distributing the gathers, and we're going to pull to make the skirt wider to fit in with the bodice. And you're just going to keep manipulating the gathers until they fit in with the bodice. Okay, I think I am about there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten out the bodice and start pinning the skirt to the bodice. You can continue to play with the gathers as you're pinning. Okay, I have the back gathered. Now I'm going to turn it over so I can gather the other side. Okay, there's the bodice. We're going to pull the skirt through and just continue until you have gathered the other side of the skirt in with the bodice like you did on the other side. Okay, after we're done pinning, this is what it should look like. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew with the gathered side facing down. The feed dogs will help to feed those gathers through nice and evenly according to the way you have pinned it. So starting at one side seam, we're going to sew all the way around. And if you come to an area where the top layer of fabric is puckered, then hold on to the fabric and allow the feed dog to pull that straight. Then you're going to finish off your seam allowance. Now I'm going to finish off my seam allowance with my serger because I like clean insides, and it helps to stitch down the seam allowance to create the casing. You don't have to do that. If you don't have a serger, you can follow the instructions from the pattern that tell you to trim down one of the seam allowances so that you can use the remaining seam allowance as your casing. Then we're going to press the seam allowance up toward the bodice. Now we're going to sew the seam allowance down onto the bodice to create the casing for our elastic. And I'm going to start away from the side seam and away from the pockets. You can start anywhere on your bodice. We're going to start with a back stitch and sew all the way around. And we're going to stop within an inch of where we started and back stitch. Okay, now we're going to add the sleeves to the dress, and you can see I've already pinned in one sleeve. So we're going to turn this up. And then I'm going to turn the sleeve right side out, and we want to make sure we're working with the correct sleeve. You want to make sure that the notches for the sleeve front and the sleeve back match the notches on the armhole opening. I'm going to take the seam, the underarm seam, and pin that together first. Then we're going to pin the notches on the front and the back. Then we're going to go up to the shoulder seam on the dress, and there is a notch at the top of the sleeve head. You want to match that marking, not a notch, a marking. You want to match that marking to the shoulder seam, making sure that the seam allowance is turned toward the back on the shoulder. And then you want to match the marking on the side, on both sides of the sleeve and the armhole opening. Now we're going to go in between and pin. In the instructions, they tell you to sew basting stitches around the sleeve so that you can gather and fit the sleeve into the armhole opening. When I'm working with the knit, I don't always do that. Sometimes I will sew the sleeve in flat lay, which means I install the sleeve before I sew at the side seam. But since I'm insetting the sleeve, which means I'm sewing it with the armhole closed, I like to just stretch it to fit. So I'm going to start here at the bottom or near the bottom, and that fits in. I'm just going to add a pin here. And then when I come to this section, you can see that the sleeve is longer than the armhole opening. So what I like to do first is take that extra on the sleeve and then center it on the armhole opening. So I have an equal amount on both sides of ease. And then I'll go in between and stretch it to fit. And you can pin it if you like, or you can just stretch as you're sewing the sleeve in at the machine, whichever you choose, okay? And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. And then that's it. Okay, now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to start at the underarm seam, and we're going to sew in a stitch from one end all the way around to the other, making sure that your machine is set for a narrow zigzag stitch. And then you will finish off your seam allowance. Then I'm going to serge off, leaving a long thread tail, and I'm going to use this plastic needle to feed the threads through the serged stitch. And I don't remember what this is called, but I had it when I used to crochet. Is it a darning needle? I don't know, but it works really well for this purpose. So I'm going to push the needle into the seam in between the two layers of fabric and feed it through, and then pull it out, and that secures the serged threads. And then we're going to go to the pressing station and we're going to press that seam allowance toward the sleeve. Okay, we have the sleeves installed. We're almost there. The next thing we're going to do is prepare for the hems. So you're going to go to the press or your sewing machine, and you're going to sew a basting stitch at the 5/8 inch mark at the bottom of the skirt, on the edge of the sleeves, and around the neckline. So I'm starting with the skirt. And next, the sleeve. and finally the neckline. Next, we're going to go to the pressing station and we're going to press up along that basting stitch all the way around on the skirt, the sleeves, and the neckline. After you have pressed up along the basting stitch, then you're going to turn in the raw edge. You're going to turn that raw edge into the fold that you pressed up. And then you're going to press. Then we're going to go to the sewing machine and I'm starting with the skirt hem and I'm going to stitch from one end all the way around to the other, sewing close to the inner folded edge. We're going to do the same thing with the sleeves and the neckline. Okay, now we're going to insert the elastic into our casing and then we will be done with the dress. So here we have the opening and I'm going to use this new tool that I purchased from Amazon. It's a threader. It's called a drawstring threader and it's a nice sturdy metal and I have tied a double knot in the opening, the eye opening here, and I'm going to test this out. So I'm going to push it through the opening, and I like the way that feels. This is my first time using it, so I love the way that feels going through. Let me turn the knot. Oh yes, I think I'm going to love this. Anything that will make feeding drawstrings through casings quicker and easier, I am all for it. Oh yes. I'm loving this. And there it is. Oh my gosh, that took no time. I love it. I absolutely love it. So yes, this will be my new tool for feeding my elastics through casings. Excellent. So I will leave a link in the description box below so that you can go and get one if you're interested. I'm going to remove the knot. Okay, then we're going to take our elastic and we're going to overlap by about an inch. And we'll go to the sewing machine and sew a zigzag stitch from one raw end of the elastic over to the other. Then we will close up this opening. And we are done with the dress. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. If so, make sure you hit the like button and leave a comment. I enjoy reading your comments and I do respond, especially when you have questions. Now, don't forget, if you would like to be a part of my private email community so that you can get advance notification when I am going to drop new videos here on my YouTube channel, there is a link in my description box that says join my community. Now I want to show you the dresses that I've made with the pattern, starting with this first one. This one is a jersey knit. It's a very lightweight jersey knit that I've had in my fabric stash for a very long time. And you can see on the screen that the neckline was low, at least for my comfort, because I don't like to show cleavage. And I knew that I would raise that up and then also widen it around the shoulder area so that I could have coverage and my bra straps wouldn't show. So this was the first one. It's very comfortable and I actually love the length of it. And then the next one was this black, gray, and white chevron. This is an ITY knit. ITY stands for interlock twist yarn. It's a very stretchy, very drapey fabric. And so this one, I did raise the neckline and you can see that I have a bit more coverage. My bra strap doesn't show when I'm wearing this one and moving around. I never have to make adjustments to cover my bra straps or my cleavage. So this one is excellent. And I love the length. I extended it to a maxi length. So that was the second one. And then the third one, oh my goodness, I fell in love with this one. I used a border print fabric, and I'll pop up the video on the screen. You can see the border print. Oh my gosh. And I used part of the border for the sleeves, so for the contrast. Absolutely gorgeous. And I actually wore this one out to my neighbor's 70th, no, 80th birthday party, my next door neighbor. And so I threw on a big floppy hat and oh my goodness, it was a hot day. So I wanted to make sure that I had full coverage from the sun, and the movement on the dress is just absolutely beautiful. So this is one that I really love. I can dress it up and just take it out anywhere. Birthday, dear Jim. Happy birthday.
the family, and the birthdays. All right.
And then finally, here is video of me wearing the one that we've sewn in the sew along. And it is just such a comfortable dress. And let me tell you, having the pockets makes all the difference. You know, us girls, we love pockets. So yes, it is definitely better with the pockets. If you would like to see more styling options of the dress that I made in today's video, then I have a blog post with lots of photos, close-up photos of the inside and outside of the dress and styling options with different shoes and purses. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.